In 2002, the Ugandan government passed the Inspectorate of Government Act that created an office of the government ombudsman, tasked with one role, fighting corruption. However, 19 years on, both the perception and the presence of corruption has increased. Transparency International ranks Uganda amongst the 38 most corrupt countries in the world, and locally, the Auditor General notes that corruption has become more sophisticated and harder to curb. The question then is, what role is the IGG playing to stop this rampant corruption? After a year of work, the IGG has prosecuted 109 cases and made recovery of only 618 million shillings. Is this enough to stop the theft of public resources? Tonight on the spot is Beti the newly appointed IGG. Honorable Beti the Inspector General of Government, thank you so much for having honored our invitation. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Patrick and NTV for having me, and good evening, viewers and listeners.
You're newly appointed Inspector General of Government, and the task ahead, I can imagine, is hard. But how did you find the office, and what is your grand strategy to take on the monumental challenge that you are facing?
Yes, Patrick, it's a monumental challenge, as you say, basically because corruption in Uganda is almost like a way of life. You know, it's people think it's okay. I think that's the biggest problem. They may make a lot of noise, but they condone it too. They glorify it too. If someone makes incredible wealth in 2 years, they won't question where the wealth is coming from. They will applaud him or her as a smart guy, a smart fellow. So one of the big problems is that the community almost condones corruption.
So when you are Inspector General of Government and you are faced with such a situation, how do you tackle it?
How you tackle it is, one, sensitization. And Patrick and listeners or viewers, I wanted to make a small correction, if you don't mind, with due respect, that the task, the job of the Inspector General of Government is not just to fight corruption. Actually, the first task, there are many functions listed, but the top one is to foster adherence, strict adherence to the rule of law and respect for natural justice, the principles of natural justice.
So when you drive around the streets of Kampala, when you are in your office, where do you even see strict adherence to the rule of law? It is not anywhere evident in our city, Kampala, or even other cities out of Kampala.
I absolutely agree with you. But because I think this particular component of the functions of the Inspector General of Government is not really given the profile it deserves. And I think also that at the Inspectorate of Government, it is also not given the prominence that it deserves. We concentrate on corruption, but corruption is really the result, many times, of violating rules.
So now you are in your new office. How do you start with sensitization? How do you start with education? How do you ensure that people of Uganda get to know what the role of the IGG, of the Inspectorate of Government is about? And how do we make sure we comply to the rules and the laws of Uganda?
I think more importantly is not to know the role of the IGG, but to know their own role. People should know that they also have a role, because the purpose that you are sensitized is so that you can react and play your role. And you begin by saying no to corruption yourself. If you don't take it and you don't give it, that's a good start. And if you know the pain, the cost, and the victim of corruption, then your mindset will face the right direction. If you appreciate the cost to you as an individual and the pain to you.
So now I can imagine you have hit the ground running. So what are you doing as a newly appointed ombudsman?
2 months in office. Myself and my 2 deputies were 2 months in office. And yes, we've hit the ground running because we said, we find, of course, there's a lot of work in the office. And it should go on. The investigation, the running after the corrupt, prosecution, calling for maximum sentences, that will go on. But there's another angle that we want to bring in, which is more preventive than curative, preventive. And the preventive one, the way we look at it, is more to mobilize the people of Uganda to own the war. You know, the problem, the best thing about a war, or the problem of a war, when people, or when you don't define or identify the owners of the war, whose war is it? If you don't own the war and you let someone else fight it for you, they probably not win it.
You just began by telling us that somehow corruption is so much embedded in our social fabric that people can actually even cheer the corrupt and call him smart and he's the best of their kind. And yet you still want these very people to be the ones who are going to be your allies in fighting corruption, yet they are totally gone as well.
Because you are going to show them that they are the victims. Actually, you know, Patrick, what happens is that the people that are employed, because most people that are designated the war of corruption are actually employed. People who are in civil society, people who are in the government anti-corruption agencies, people, I mean, like myself, most of us are employed to fight corruption. But we should be employed to lead in the war. But the owners of the war need to understand their role and how they fit in. And the reason I call them the owners of the war is the people that are employed to fight corruption, they do not feel the pain of corruption. They do not understand, because when you go to Mulago and there's no medicine, they'll fly you out of the country. They'll fly you, your friends, because they can afford it, or your employer, or yourself. You get out of the country.
Well, that is common with politicians, where you belong.
I'm not,
At one point, you're a politician.
I'm not exonerating anybody.
Yes.
And you, Patrick, because of your stature and your connections, if you ask me to contribute, I would, because you can reach me also. I
don't want to ask for a contribution when I'm hurting. but look.
Yes, I know. But
let me refresh your mind, because the NRM government that you serve.
Yes.
When the NRM government came to power in 1986, that came to power in 1986, they came brandishing what they called the 10-point program.
Yes.
One of the points, I think was point number 7, was fighting and elimination of corruption. Almost 40 years later, corruption has only grown in intensity and scope.
True.
If failure has meaning, the NRM government has failed in that. Because if you've had almost 40 years, and this is one of the points that you took you to the bush to fight and say, now this is what we want to eliminate, and you have failed. You know, total failure.
Patrick, that's why I'm saying that I think the problem was not in identifying whose war. In Uganda, they say, "Ani nanyini mufu," who is the bereaved. You know, ani nanyini mufu.
To touch the most stinking part.
Yes. So you call the neighbors and you say, but say, who is the bereaved? In this case, the bereaved are the masses. The person who goes to Mulago and dies because there's no medicine, because the medicine was taken through corruption. The medicine was taken through corruption.
Yeah, but you see, the government that you serve in 1986 realized that this is our biggest problem.
Yes.
Out of the 10 problems we have, this is one thing we need to tackle. Almost 40 years later, this has only grown.
But you know, Patrick, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
What else can you use to describe failure? This is total failure.
legislative and administrative effort that has been put in place. For instance, we have creatures of the Constitution, like the Office of the Inspector General of Government. You have the judiciary, you have the legislature, the committees of parliament, you have the executive, you have the Office of the Auditor General, you have the CID, you have police, you have the PPDA. The legislative arms were created. And each time you think you've hit a dead end, you create another one.
Okay.
So there are other creatures of parliamentary action, the laws, the Whistleblowers Act, the Anti-Corruption Act, the Anti-Money Laundering
Yes,
Act.
but you see,
so many of
all
them.
those things you're enumerating, you're telling us, you're talking about, are good. And the intention is good. You know, there are so many platforms that can be used to fight corruption.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the more we get more corrupt.
That's why I'm telling you that now, what we are doing, what my regime is the new thing that we are doing are two. To add, to complement what's already in place. One, to focus more on sensitization as a prevention measure. And two, to also change the method of getting those people. Because you see, the public is always fighting, the public is always crying, give us the big fish, give us the big fish. You are tired of catching mukene only, or silverfish. And the reason that happens is because people cover their trails so well. You will not find a corrupt person signing somewhere. You will not catch them red-handed receiving money from anybody. So you got them, you take them to court, the judge wants you to prove beyond reasonable doubt. And so cases after cases collapse in court at prosecution.
Because
so
the corrupt can actually use that money even to cover themselves.
Exactly, which you're coming to my point. So the new thing we are adding, now we want the lifestyle audit to be, okay, I may not catch you, but if I see you living beyond your known sources of income, then the burden shifts on you to prove how
you're now assuming that all those who have stolen the money are going to splash it, are going to show it, to flash it around.
Oh yes, they do.
Because they are going to flash it around. There are those who are going to steal the money, and not everybody is going to live a life of externalism, showing whatever they have.
No.
They can still have the money and don't show it.
I know, but you send your children abroad for school.
You actually have a saying in Uganda, "Tebifananachi." Those who have may not look like they have the money.
Yes, but you see, Patrick, I don't expect that we are going to have 100% success in year one. It's a new addition. If you sensitize people to start being curious and suspicious, and you're driving a car, and I know you are a public employee, you are a government employee, you earn 2 or 3 million shillings, and you're sending your children abroad for school, and you're living in a mansion, and you're building several other mansions, surely I can now ask you to account for that lifestyle. That's what you call the lifestyle audit. And we want everybody in this new method of sensitization, people to start focusing on other people, on their neighbors' lifestyles, and questioning whether...
You have lately acquired a lot of faith from the people of Uganda that they'll start going to work and help the NRM government in the fight against corruption. Because when people feel so excluded about it, you think they're going to report? It's
not the war of the NRM. That's what I'm telling you. We are telling them that it is your war. If it's your war, NRM is only giving you an enabling environment by making the laws, by making jails, by recruitment of judges. The Chief Justice yesterday told us, actually, what is happening is that now there will be many more judges, judicial officers. So the NRM government will create a conducive environment for you to be able to fight corruption. But
lifestyle audit that you're talking about now is not any different from the existing laws that we have that require public officials to declare their wealth.
Yes.
If that was not worked, what makes you think the lifestyle audit or whatever you want to call it is going to work this time around? Because it is something similar.
Yes, but according to the Leadership Code Act, all public officers are required to declare their wealth, and they do. And after declaring the wealth, then the office of the IG would then verify. But what we are saying, because what people have been reporting, what people have been reporting are incidences of he stole money from the office, you know. But stealing money from the office is very hard to adduce evidence that will stand in court. But I know that when you steal it, and I cannot adduce evidence in court that you took it, you are going to spend it somewhere. And that's what I want you to account for. And that's what we are calling people. By the way, people are interested. People are interested.
So you are assuming that the corrupt cannot be smart enough also to cover their trail, have property in the name of anybody else and hide it?
Oh yes, they can, but the risks, you increase the risk. Because if it is your property, Patrick, and you put in the names of your son or your wife, it's risky. They could take it, you know they could, and we are going to encourage them actually to take it. If they come and report, we might have laws that actually give them half of it. So you're going to make it very, 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 very attractive for people to report.
Kamya, you recently said Uganda is losing 10 trillion a year through corruption.
Yes.
That's a colossal sum of money.
Yes.
Considering our budget, which is about 45 trillion. So in other words, we are losing a quarter of Uganda's budget through corruption. I mean, that's a sad story.
Very, very sad story. I agree. And that's why I said it, so that people may understand. And I even go beyond that and try to give listeners the picture of what 10 trillion shillings can do to a population. And I bring it down to the parish model. Consider the parish model, for instance. We have 10,000 parishes in Uganda, approximately 10,000 parishes. And so if you save that 10 trillion and divide it into parishes, each parish can easily get 1 billion shillings a year. Now think of my Kadito parish of Lunguja getting 1 billion shillings a year, every year for 5 years, for instance. And I think of what that can do. Year one, if you put 1 billion shillings in my Lunguja parish circle for people to borrow money for their businesses, for their houses, for the school fees for their children, life would be transformed with one. Second year, 1 billion shillings can buy a laptop for every student.
So let me ask,
so the
if
point,
we are
if you allow me
losing
to
10 trillion shillings a year, how much money, using the agencies available, have we been able to recover?
No. I don't even want to answer that, because I've just told you it is so difficult. We take people to court, we do, but a case for a case to stand, because the judge wants beyond reasonable doubt, and most cases collapse. Plus of course the corruption helps them to collapse. But that's why we are giving people this information, so that it may dawn upon them that if they joined in the war of corruption and they brought it down home to their own parishes, what it could do for them. That's why I want people to own the war, because, Patrick, this war is being fought by people who are employees, paid, not people who feel the pain. It's like, you know, the war.
You know, I'm still thinking about that money of 10 trillion, because, you know, a trillion is like 1,000 billion.
Yes.
Ugandan. A trillion is 1,000 billion. In other words, we have lost 10,000 billion through corruption. Can you imagine? 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. But your neighbor Kamya is saying this country loses 10 trillion. That's 10,000 billion.
That was a study.
That goes to the west, to the drain. And that's
Actually,
a quarter of Uganda. That's almost a quarter of Uganda's budget.
Yes, you know, actually, put it in proper perspective. It's not like throwing it in the lake or burying it and putting soil over it in a grave. It is diverting priorities. For instance, money that would make, if you get 100 million, for instance, you build a house and you buy cement, and the cement manufacturer will get some money. The masons, the builders, the water, they'll get some of that
what
money.
You're saying that
but what I'm saying, no.
It stays
what
within.
I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. The money stays in the economy, but it is diverted. No.
Yeah.
It is diverted. It's not like you throw it in the lake. It stays in the economy, but it is diverted, and it from priorities. It is not planned for. It is unplanned for growth, and diverted. And it's diverted from priorities. For instance, I'll tell you, we have most corruption goes actually in real estate. Most people build houses. Those houses you see in Naria, in Nigeria, if you wanted to look at them, and I will go there, I assure you, I will take interest. The construction industry is the fastest growing, and the World Bank will give you those figures, and the economists in Uganda and the Minister of Finance and UBOS will tell you that the construction industry is the fastest growing sector at 12%. But we know that most of the corruption money is actually hidden in the construction industry. But the point is, when it is not taken by individuals and it stays in the pool, then government will plan priorities that are good for everybody, and it's planned development. So I don't want to think that money dumped in the lake, which you will never see. It is here in the economy, but it is not planned by government.
Hold on to your point, Honorable Beti. Olive Turuame, the Inspector General of Government. We're going to take a break, and on the spot, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is the Inspector General of Government, Beti Olive Chiromwe, and discussing the strategy of fighting corruption. You know, I've been following government's intention, especially the creation of all these platforms. Now the IGG, you have the Auditor General, you have the PPDA, you have the State House Anti-Corruption Agency there. You also have in civil society anti-corruption agencies. You know, you have the police, CID, and all these things. We are not lacking institutions and platforms to fight, but they lack the fight in them.
Exactly. You see, Patrick, you've just made my day, because you said exactly what I was trying to say it, but you used one word to say it all. That's what I was saying, that the people who are designated to fight the war are not the owners of the war. That's why I said, whose war? The owner of the war must own the war and fight it. And I wanted to give you an example of the war against apartheid in South Africa. Whose war was it? There were many white people who were very supportive and sympathetic and put a lot of money and fight in the war. But at the end of the day, it was not their war. The owner of the war, Nanyini Mufu, must come out. Now, if two people, a black man and a white man, both fighting apartheid, if they worked together and went to a hotel and they said, Mr. White Man, please come in, Mr. Black Man, sorry, you can't come in. The white man does, he may say, out of solidarity, I will not come, I'll go with my friend. But he does not suffer the humiliation, the segregation, everything that you suffer as the owner of the war. That's why in my new regime, we are saying we are recruiting the masses of Uganda, the victims of corruption. They must recognize themselves as the victims of corruption and join the war. that is the only way.
But you know,
we shall
it can
fight
also
this
be a risk venture for somebody to go poking their nose into people's property and then they go and report. How do you intend to protect somebody who's going to blow the whistle on the alleged corrupt official?
One, it starts by attitude. Attitude. Stop glorifying everybody who buys a new car. Now, you know, you should make people shy about living lavish lifestyles which they have not worked for, not feel good about it. Even even children, you know, when they go to school and they brag, my father bought a Hammer, my father bought a V80, mine has this one. Now the other kids should be asking, how much is it? And can your father afford it? What does he do? I mean, those questions should now be part of the conversation, so that the cost, and the children should not take for granted the home comforts that they enjoy. They should put into them the awareness that the comforts you are enjoying, maybe somebody's dying because of that, because there's no medicine in the hospital. So we must change the mindset of the entire community to start thinking of corruption as an evil that hurts us. Not you know, I was talking to councillors of some place, and I was talking about all these things, the lifestyle audit, and one lady councillor, a very well-respected person, she stood up and said, you know, it's like you let them be. Let them be.
So now, that
that's
woman,
the general
unfortunately,
attitude.
that woman represents a bigger percentage of Uganda.
But I got an opportunity to tell her.
That woman, you know, who's told you let them be, is coming from a very strong constituency.
Exactly.
And it shows you how corruption is so much embedded in Uganda's social fabric.
Yes.
Because if you tackle him, chances are you're swimming against the current.
Yeah, I agree. But
and then chances are that you will drown.
No, you will not drown. Because, you know, there's one man who started with the 12 disciples. And today, you know how many he has? About 2,000 years ago. He started with 12 fishermen. And today he has half the world. And there's another man 2,000 years later who started with 27 guns. And you know where he is today. So the Chinese say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a footstep, one step. And we should not fear to begin. If I started with that woman, because I told her, Madam, beyiza mu lusuku okimanyi nti beyiza mu lusuku, and she pondered, meaning those who don't understand Uganda. Okay, they're hustling in your plantation. Is that what you want? And then she realized, actually, I don't want them to hustle in my plantation. So this awareness, fortunately, this is the age of so much communication, gadgets, and platforms. And I think it's a great time to be mobilizing people to understand.
The standard bearers of our morals and goodness, the church leaders or religious leaders, have actually given the alleged corrupt a position in the church, near the pulpit, the moment to speak to the flock, because they are the ones helping in building the houses of God. If it has gone to that level, the people who have to look up to as the standard bearers of what morality should be.
And by the grace of...
I wonder how the newly appointed IGG is actually going to turn around things.
Actually, by the grace of God, Patrick and dear viewers, yesterday, the Interreligious Council of Uganda, which brings together most of the religions here in Uganda, held their, I think, General Assembly. It's called a General Assembly. And all of them were there. And they put corruption high up on the agenda. And they invited me to talk to them. And I talked some of the things I'm saying here and a lot more to them. And we agreed that they are going to take center stage in condemning corruption and in mobilizing the community to be aware that they are the victims of corruption. You know, once a person knows that I'm a victim, I am the victim, which is what we don't know now. You see, Patrick, for people to own, I want to give you an example of border border. If you want to know how people own a war, try messing with a border border rider. Knock him or scratch him. Before you know it, they will surround you.
But
they
you know,
they don't even need to know the border border
You're
person.
actually bringing an example of anarchy.
I'm
This is
telling you.
lawlessness in Uganda.
Yes, but I'm telling you about the principle of owning a war. Owning a war.
But you can't use such an example because those are, you know, at that level,
Yes.
it's anarchy.
Okay, maybe
it's lawlessness.
It's not
It's
a good
hooliganism.
example. It's not may not be a good example, but it's an example of when people own a war. I can even give you an example of a chicken thief in the village. You know, a chicken thief in the village, if they catch you, they can even lynch you. But if you tell a person that man stole 1 billion shillings and you are taking him to court, they will demonstrate, leave our son alone. Because they don't own that 1 billion shillings. They don't think it's theirs, you know. So they've got to know that that man stole from them. He did not steal from government.
So how clean are the agencies mandated to fight corruption themselves? Because I've heard that it is alleged that those officers, with all respect, including yours, are people whose hands are tainted.
It is possible. It is possible. And we have said in our war, we are going to start by checking ourselves at the IGG. I've already told my people. Beginning next month, we are going to have a verification of assets of about 200 people, beginning with the leadership of the Inspectorate of Government, leading by example. Leading by example. Then we shall select people whose responsibilities put them in a direct contact with the accountability, you know, accounting officers, for instance.
Yes.
So if you start like that, and people know that everybody is watching them, we must start this war. It cannot be won by people up there when people down here are mere observers. By the way, let me tell you, people up there who have access to corruption of public funds are about 100,000, not more. But the 42 million are just either cursing or glorifying.
This is what one of the judges was quoted saying something back, that there is total failure to prosecute high-level corruption in Uganda. You are simply letting the big fish swim. They are untouchables. This court is tired of trying tilapia when crocodiles are left to swim.
Yes.
What does I think of a judge?
Yes.
I think Justice Katusi. This is the exact thing that is happening.
And it is the judges who say, bring, they call it what? Evidence beyond reasonable doubt.
Because that's
and I'm telling you, when people negotiate a kickback on the road, or any procurement, it is so hard to pin them down. That's why you only see the money in their lifestyles, not in how they got it, because they negotiated the deal somewhere where you'll never know, or through proxies or whatever. And it is the judges who say the case has collapsed for lack of evidence.
And listen to what I think Auditor General John Mwanga was quoted saying in 2013. Someone will ask, will it pay? If it will, one will steal. If it won't pay, one won't steal. It should be too expensive to steal. This is why corruption is happening on a grand scale. They must steal enough to stay out of jail.
I need to think about that.
Because the money they have stolen is enough to protect them themselves.
Yes,
I think that's how I understand them. So the money that is stolen can actually insulate them from getting prosecuted.
That's why the lifestyle audit will be very helpful. Will be very helpful when you have to account for that money. I mean, even the Pablo is called who? Escobars of this world. At the end of the day, even the Pablo Escobars of this world, they've died in jail because somebody said, I'm going to fight you. You're not going to win this war. People died in the war, but at the end of the day, even Pablo Escobar died.
There's a little difference between the lifestyle audit and the leadership code. Because it's actually the same thing, you're giving it another name. And yet, the leadership code, I remember it only quote one member of parliament from one of the constituencies close to you, and that was it.
That, oh, okay, that he was the victim.
Yeah.
Because
because this is the leadership code, you are giving a name of lifestyle audit.
Yes. What government should
didn't work then.
What
I wonder why you think it's going to work now.
It's going to work now because I am determined. I read my lips. Read my lips. It's going to work because I'm determined to make it work. But only if everybody plays their role. Government must also fund the office of the IGG, of the Inspectorate of Government, and the people must also stop protecting the thieves. If you protect them, then you are also guilty of the fact. So everybody should play their role. I will play my role. I have a 4-year contract. In the 4-year contract, I have promised myself, I have promised appointing authority, and I promised the people of Uganda that I will make a difference. I will make a difference.
You have
and my colleagues, of course, it's not just me.
We talked about 200 people there in your office you're going to begin with, and I'm wondering, is that all?
No, no, no. 200 people.
Because you seem to be very thin on the ground, and yet I suppose you need quite a big number of foot soldiers.
That's true.
So how do you intend to serve 42 million people with such a small team?
That's why I'm saying that we need government also to facilitate this fight better. And I think that we've made enough noise for government to consider upping our budget. Because to tell you the truth, we've been funded by development partners. The government has been funding us to some extent, but also the development partners as well. So we need government to come out more and fund the Inspectorate of Government. But I think that I'm sure that this time round, government is committed. And you can see from the judiciary, we were with the Chief Justice yesterday at a function, and he said, I sat down to the president and I told him, if you want me to do a good job, including fighting corruption, then the judiciary must be supported. And steps are being taken.
But now you have a special court.
Yes, but one is not enough. Do you know the number of cases? Now I have about, what I found in my office, about 5,000 active cases. 5,000.
On corruption? On
corruption. Active cases on corruption. And about 100 cases in court for prosecution. And they keep coming in every day. And not just to me, to State House Anti-Corruption Unit, to Parliament, to, wherever people, whistleblowers, can get a hearing.
To have so many cases of corruption in the country, also there's an indication that country has a deficit of integrity in it. And yet I don't think this is how we were maybe 30 or 40 or 50 years back. So why is it that this time around there seems to be more of an integrity deficit than it was the case in the past years? What's wrong with us, with the community of today? The people who are being nurtured and the children are being raised today. What's wrong with us?
Good thing you said us. Good thing you said what's wrong with us. I don't know. I think it's everybody's concern that we should focus on the integrity deficit, like you called it so aptly, the integrity deficit. We need to go back to the drawing board. And I think one of the problems that we have as Uganda and maybe as Africa, we take wholesale what happens abroad. Actually, I have a friend of mine who is a Danish man, and he said Ugandans are very prayerful people. We're talking about corruption. He says that because every meeting we first pray, every time we pray, we pray, and I'm surprised we didn't begin this show with a prayer.
Pray in the morning.
Because as Ugandans we do that.
When the
but
station
then,
is opening, there's a prayer.
Corruption is at that level. And he said, for us in Denmark, they're not so religious. You know, in Europe, I think on religion, they're not very strong. But the values are religious, although the practices are not religious as we know them. So I think we need a conversation as a country, really, to know what happened. Why is everybody so permissive of its permissiveness of lack of integrity? It's sad, really.
It is systematic and systemic.
True.
That's how it is. But it is also not helped when you find, for example, like in the previous parliament, when the NRM government has an idea to be introduced in parliament, maybe a change, amendment of a constitution, it is alleged members of parliament are given money so that they can be able to think about something, and then they turn it around. If corruption is alleged to be taking place in the hallowed ground of a parliament, how do you expect on the streets people to behave?
It's so bad. But now, to go back to the question of integrity that I talked about, in my days, which are many years before your days, Patrick, you know, religion was practiced in schools and at home. Now, most schools behave as if they're secular schools, and in homes, the parents are too busy doing their businesses. So those values that were inculcated, and in those days, many parents, especially mothers, were home mothers, so there was a lot of parenting at home, and the fathers, life was regular. It was a 8 to 5 job for the men, and the women were home looking after the children, and everybody goes to school on Sunday because it's a school rule. If you don't show up then on Monday, you have to explain to the headmaster. Those things are not there anymore. So children are not even learning any religious values. So we think we need to go back to maybe the drawing board and ask ourselves, why did we let it all go? Maybe we should introduce religion back in the schools.
But you know, things have gotten out of hand largely more in the last 35 or something years of our country. But in those years, we've had the NRM that is running the show.
But you know,
the NRM government.
Patrick.
So if we're pointing fingers, we're pointing fingers at the governance and leadership of the country.
No, let me tell you, Patrick. In the years of Amin, or the years of Beti 2, how many were they? About 8? And then there was years of Amin. What was there? There was nothing in this country. There was nothing. You remember? Those were days of cheats and hoarding, and even to find something to buy at all.
So you're saying there was nothing to steal?
There was even nothing to steal. And for me, I remember the grand corruption in Beti 2, because I had started working. We used to celebrate the 27th of May. That was the day that Dr. Beti came back from exile. But all the industries in Uganda would reserve all the products of that month to go to Bushenyi to celebrate. I'm telling you, because I was working. And all the civil servants, that month, there was no work. They're either in Bushenyi constructing stalls, preparing, and all the products would go free. Then we had that minister of supplies who used to give cheats. If he gives you a cheat.
But you know, Dr. Milton Obote was a leader who was living a modest life. I have not heard of stories that he was amassing or, wealth or buying property or building them and stuff like that.
I don't know. I don't know.
He seemed to be a man who died more or less like a pauper.
I think so. He didn't have a lot of money, but I'm just saying there was nothing even in this country. There was nothing. If somebody went to Kenya and brought you bread, you'd be so grateful. From Busia, they'd bring us bread. There was no bread in Uganda here. You couldn't find bread in the whole of Uganda. You had to get it from Kenya.
So does it make sense that because there is something, so that's why they are stealing?
No, no, no. You are saying, how come there's so much corruption now? And I was saying there was even nothing to steal then. I don't know whether you are looking at it that way.
Actually, people had more values. Like the ones you talk about in Europe. People had values of trust.
Yeah, I'm not here to defend anything or anybody, Patrick. I'm here just to mobilize the people of Uganda. Let us admit that corruption has grown to pandemic proportions, and all the people of Uganda now need to get together into this war. You know, this is the war where everybody must join the war, and don't point at so and so. Government will provide leadership. Government will provide the environment, the legislative, the courts, whatever the institutions, the people to support. But this is a war where everybody must join in.
Honorable Beti Olive Turuome Kamya, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'll open the lines so that you too can be a part of this discussion. You're going to see the numbers on the screen. Pick your phone and tell us what you think, and maybe how this monster of corruption can be fought in our country. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Honorable Beti Olive Turuome, who is the Inspector General of Government, and we're discussing the fight against corruption. And she's saying now, she's promising, but this time around, she's going to work hard because she's committed to ensure that the people of Uganda can realize that they are the victims of corruption, and so if they can get into the fight, then corruption can be dealt a death blow. You're going to see the numbers on the screen. You pick your phone and you tell us what you think. Maybe ask a question to Honorable Kamya so that she can respond to you. But I know December 9th is supposed to be, or the anti-corruption week is beginning soon. So what do we expect? What should we expect?
The United Nations General Assembly designated 9th December.
If you can hold there, then I'm going to, so that these Ugandans want to talk to you. I have a call online. Hello. Hello? Then I'm going to, so that these Ugandans want to talk to you. Okay. I have a call online. Hello? I'm having a reverb there, so. Hello? Then I think my producers, I'm sure you're hearing that, so we can't have that conversation. All right, go right ahead.
On the 9th of December, the United Nations General Assembly designated the 9th of December to be the International Anti-Corruption Day. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of that is to get all state and non-state actors and all people in the world to think about the cost of corruption, the evils of corruption, and how to fight corruption. And so on the 9th of December, that will be next Thursday, Thursday next week, okay, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate the Anti-Corruption Day. And the function will take place in Kololo, ceremonial grounds, but because of COVID restrictions, we shall invite only a few people. The other people, I invite you to follow the proceedings wherever you will be, but more importantly, to focus in your mind on the cost of corruption, the evils of corruption, and how you can get involved. Okay, let's have the people there. Let's hear from them. I have a call online. Hello. Hello. I have a call online. The number's on the screen. You call us and make it very brief. Tell us where you are and what your name is, and if you have a question, please put your question forward to the Inspector General of Government, and she will be able to respond to you. So in the marking of the anti-corruption week, on the week begins, has already started. Yes. But we asked religious leaders, whom I met yesterday or the day before yesterday. We asked them to use this weekend. From tomorrow, the 3rd, we asked all the mosques to mold their message around the evils of corruption. the mosques in Uganda. And on Saturday, all the Seventh-day churches to mold their messages around the cost and evils of corruption and who the victims are.
Okay.
And on Sunday, all the churches.
All right. My producer is trying to make sure that he gets the line. We're having some comms challenges, but let me try to see if I can get a person through. We have a call online. Hello? Hello? Okay, I think I'm getting some communication challenges there. And so, you know, you choose a day, you choose a week, and then you say, now we are going to, you maximize your time and you try to tell the people to remind them about the corruption and the dangers of corruption, the evils of corruption, and how they are victims of corruption. And then after that, somehow everybody lowers, you know, remove the leg on the accelerator, and you go back to Lao.
No, that shouldn't happen, because everybody should have deliverables until the next anti-corruption day. That's 12 months later, and we shall ask people to explain what they have done in this year. So true, and that's why there are international days commemorated or celebrated once a year, because during the rest of the year, so many other things are happening, but they bring you back to that one topic once a year. And those that are responsible for managing that activity should drive it, really. And for us, we have lined up so many activities this year that the 9th of May is just the launch of a series of activities. And we're working together, both state and non-state actors, and we shall not put our. Of course, there are challenges. Money gets diverted to other unforeseen circumstances like COVID-19, and almost every year there is unseen circumstances, unplanned circumstances that divert attention and resources. But we shall try to keep our attention on this activity as well.
You earlier talked about the issue of resources that probably are not funded like you would have wished to be funded, but I can also see the manpower is still wanting. The people you have to work with are not very many, and yet that problem has been persisting. It has been there for quite some time. How come the people in charge of our affairs, the presidency, people who are allocating the resources, have not looked at it and then, put the required resources the way how you think it should be?
I don't know. Well, of course, there are many competing.
Found themselves in the same dilemma where you are.
I mean, there's so many competing needs in this country. So many competing needs. So you just have to chop the resources and try to spread them out. I realize that. But also, we shall try to make sure that more is given for this activity, because it is not just a consumptive resource activity, but it also saves a lot of money from the public coffers, but also recovers even the money that was stolen. And by the way, before we leave this topic, Patrick, people should know that corruption, there's a lot of corruption in the private sector as well. Procurement officers in the private sector, they inflate prices, they buy air. Storekeepers, they take out things. The human resource managers, they employ less qualified people over more qualified people. At the end of the day, that makes the product very expensive in terms of quality and even the price, and it makes our entire economy an expensive and less competitive economy. So I don't want people to think that corruption happens only in government. Oh, there's a lot of corruption in the private sector as well. So corruption is about money that is going from the consolidated fund and gets hijacked along the way, but even money that is not in the consolidated fund is also misused And then, of course, money gets out of people's pockets to buy services which they would have paid for anyway by contributing to the consolidated fund. So it's huge, it's bigger in context than even the 10 trillion shillings we talk about when we talk about corruption in the private sector. There is a lot of corruption in the private sector.
You know, money is collected, let's say by URA, and then when they come to Parliament, when the government presents a budget, Parliament appropriates money to different government entities.
Yes.
And then they are expected to use it effectively. Sometimes they don't, but the same Parliament is supposed to have an oversight role to go and see how these government programs are running. And sometimes a report is given by the Auditor General, who looks through the books of accounts, and then the Public Accounts Committee will go through them. But I wonder what do we really get out of that cycle. But my producer is telling me there's another person online in case the technology is accepting tonight. We shall hear from them. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
From Turkey.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to have some comment. Too on NTV.
Go right ahead. You're on air.
Yeah. So they're talking about I'm here online. Hello.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm here online watching NTV right now.
All right. Thank you. You're watching NTV. Thank you so much.
So I'm asking from where, so the coverage.
Well, so now you have all these agencies from Parliament, appropriation, and then oversight, and then also we have the Auditor General is looking through the books of account. A report is given, Public Accounts Committee or whoever, and sometimes the government officials are called. But are we really getting value from that?
Good question. I think we need to go back.
Hello, I have a call online. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Let me stop the lines for now. Okay.
We need to go back to the drawing board and evaluate, apart from the information that piles up on the shelves of the Parliament or executive or the judiciary, we probably don't get a lot of value in terms of responding and the final product of reducing, because what we're looking for, the final product should be in reducing corruption. But in terms of information, yes, we get a lot of information. What we use that information for is another question. And it's that information, of course, that gives us the indices all over the world. I mean, without that information, you would not be able to evaluate yourselves against other people. But in terms of the final objective, the ultimate objective, I think we still have a lot of work to do. We should admit that.
Has there been maybe some kind of an improvement? Because I can see now the new system of payments, the financial integrated system, something from the Minister of Finance, whereby money is just sent direct to people's accounts from the Minister of Finance. Has it helped maybe in reducing the technology that's being used in reducing corruption? Because
I'm telling you,
using technology, you eliminate some.
It should. It's supposed to. It's supposed to. But it's people that make the systems and people that use the systems. But what I've seen in the 2 months that I've been in office, you send money to, say, local government, and they just share it out. Not just local government, actually anywhere else. And people I think money that really goes down for service delivery is about 25% of what is released or what is appropriated. What reaches people in terms of service delivery could be about 25%.
What?
The rest is shared by officials. That's why they're not even more than 100,000 or 200,000. They just share it out. That's why I said that the war, everybody needs to join in the war, so that they, you know, they audit the people.
As we try to conclude our program tonight, Honorable Beti, so where do you draw your optimism that this is a fight you can actually win? Because I see a monumental challenge. You are swimming against the current. You're holding the bull by the horns, and all indicators are.
I don't think that you can win it in 1 year or 2 years, but you can move forward, because what is happening now is we are moving at best stagnated, because corruption perception indices are on a scale of 1 to 100. Uganda has been scoring for the last 5 years, has been scoring about 27, 28%, and ranked number 140 out of 180 countries, and that's around the region. Anyway, we're not, most of us in the region are in that range. It's not Uganda alone. So with that kind of we've been stagnant, or at worst regressing. So what we can do now, or what I'm hoping to do now, at least reverse that, stop the regression, and start the process of moving forward positively. But you may not, and you shall not, win the war in a year or two, because even countries that are doing so well, like the Scandinavian countries, they are getting 80%, which means there's still 20% corruption in those countries with very strict laws. In fact, in the UK, they have what they call the unexplained wealth order. You know, somebody can go to court actually and secure an unexplained wealth order and slap it on you to explain your wealth. And they have, several countries have that now, which is close to the lifestyle audit that I'm talking about. They have it. It's called the Unexplained Wealth Order, UWO. And somebody can get it and slap it on you. And then the burden shifts on you to explain your wealth. And that's where we need to go.
Unfortunately, we had a technical hitch, and those who would have loved to ask you questions did not. My producer's telling me now we have, maybe. Let me try again, and if the line works, the numbers on the screen.
Hello.
Hello, good evening, what's your name?
Hello.
Good evening, Nyabo.
Good evening.
What's your name and where you're calling from, and what's your question?
My name is Maria.
Yes, Maria.
I'm calling from Preventive.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, I heard you talking about leadership code, and I was wondering what is leadership code, and where does it come in fighting corruption? Thank you.
All right. Okay, Maria from Kawempe there, thank you so much with your question, and the IGG will respond to that, I suppose. Maybe you can go for it.
Maria, thank you, Maria, for asking this question. Chapter 14 of the Constitution of Uganda creates the Leadership Code Act, the Leadership Code. And under the Leadership Code, all people who get money from the Consolidated Fund are required, in terms of salary and emoluments, are required to declare their wealth to the Inspector General of Government for monitoring, and they're supposed to do that every 2 years. Every 2 years, and once you've declared your wealth, then the Inspectorate of Government is required to verify it, and some people, and there are sanctions for false declarations. And if you don't declare or do false declaration, then there's the Leadership Code Tribunal, which takes on the cases of people who under-declare or don't even declare. So the Leadership Code is about the conduct, monitoring the conduct of public servants, especially those who are paid from
in other words, they do not want somebody to amass wealth that they know you earn this.
Yes.
You're a teacher, a headmaster, or you're a minister. This is what you earn. How come you have built so many things that's worth billions of shillings?
And
so
if you, and they monitor you every 2 years.
So that you have to explain how you got that money.
How you got that money.
Yet you have been working for government for this long, every day. So,
thank you. That's what it is, Maria.
All right. Okay. Probably just take one more caller, and before the IGG makes her concluding remark. Okay. So now, 9th of this month is when you have the peak of the anti-corruption week.
Yes.
But moving forward,
actually, anti-corruption, yes, week.
Anti-corruption week, yes. What's going to be your concluding remark, and what do you want to tell the people of Uganda?
Fellow countrymen, please take this as a war, like we took the war against AIDS or the war against COVID-19, because it affects all of us, and we must all join in fighting the war against corruption. And you remember, when we were fighting the war against AIDS and the war against COVID-19, one of the key things that you need to do is to unmask it and give it a face, so that people know what AIDS looks like and how you get it, and what COVID-19 looks like and how you get it. In the same way, we want to unmask corruption and give it a face. And the face of corruption is that lifestyle which is not commensurate with somebody's known source of income. That expensive car, that mansion that you live in, those trips abroad that you go with your family, which are not commensurate with the person's income or job, is the face of corruption. So we are going to be, I am calling upon you all to be your brother's keepers and to be your sister's keepers. We are going to establish a call center. If you have any suspicion, and some of you know, it is your husband, it is your wife, it is your brother, you live with them, please be patriotic and report cases of corruption to the call center, which we shall establish very soon, and then you have joined the war against corruption. It's a national war. Everybody must join in. In Uganda, they call it Gwanga Muje. Everybody join in.
All right. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you too for inviting me and for the viewers.
Thank you, Beti Tirwome, the Inspector General of Government. I want to thank you so much for your time, but most of all for your insight and dedication in commitment in fighting corruption. I just want to agree, the fight against corruption is just not for one person or one individual, one entity. It's our fight too. We need to get involved in this fight, because if we eliminate corruption, then it means service delivery can be more effective and many people can get served. So in this fight, there's no them and us. It's all of us.
Wonderful.
Good night, and God bless Uganda.